Cloud computing in 10 minutes. Copyright notice. A brief introduction about myself before we actually get started with the video. This is Raja Kumar Sampath Kumar, based out of New Jersey. I hold a bachelor's degree in computer science and engineering. I hold a master's degree in business administration, specialized in operations. With over a decade of experience on infrastructure services, specialized on cloud computing. Extensive knowledge on cloud computing, IT solution design, and infrastructure architecture. In my day job as Director of Solution Engineering at a high-tech firm, I'm responsible for architecting custom solutions for business challenges and implementing the same for blue-chip companies. If you wish to follow me at RJ Navigator via Twitter. Cloud computing is a daily spoken and most commonly used terminology in every forum. Every conversation with a CIO has a reference to cloud computing today. Cloud computing, as the name indicates, is derived from the concept of internet. Before and by 2000, internet is referred as cloud. Whenever you have to show internet in an illustration, it will be shown as a cloud. As internet is connection of computers, and further you can't see internet as an entity, it is depicted as cloud. It is important to understand some basic concepts before we get into cloud computing. Data center. Data center is a physical location where you host your servers that run massive computing workloads or business critical computing workloads. Traditionally, every business would own its own data center where they host servers to execute workloads, then later a space to host your servers on which you run business application was offered a service. These data centers would either be owned by the business or owned by the third party that would offer this as a service to the business. There could be multiple applications that are responsible for executing these workloads. As technology evolves every day, so as the service industry. With this evolution, layers of service are offered to have these workloads executed. Depending on the layer or level where the service is rendered, the cloud layers are stacked, and thus evolves cloud stacks. It is important to understand some technical terminologies before we get into the details of cloud computing. A disruptive innovation is an innovation that helps create a new market and value network and eventually disrupts an existing market and value network over a few years or decades, displacing an earlier technology. Virtualization in computing refers to the act of creating a virtual rather than an actual version of something, including but not limited to a virtual computer hardware platform, operating system, storage device, or computer network resources. Hypervisor or virtual machine monitor is a piece of computer software, firmware, or hardware that creates and runs virtual machines. Now, some history. Cloud computing can simply be described as computing based on internet. The very idea of cloud computing takes us back to 1969 since the development of ARPANET, Advanced Research Projects Agency Network. From then, cloud computing has evolved through a number of phases, which includes grid and utility computing, application service provision, ASP, and software as a service. It is important to understand the concept of virtualization before we get into cloud computing. In virtualization, you have a host hardware, on top of which we have a hypervisor layer, on which you either run a virtual machine and an administrative environment. NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, defines cloud this way. I think without getting into the details here, the key attributes of cloud makes more sense. The bullet points listed here: self-service, elasticity, platform to design and automate, vision to improvise and offer service based on need, optimize and build efficiency of scale. These are the characteristics of any good cloud provider. With that said, according to me, on-demand self-provisioning computing power available at different levels of business consumption for an optimal cost is cloud computing. As a service, it is important to understand the deployment models to identify at what layer you may want to consume the cloud as a service. Traditionally, in any data center or in a colocation, you will have a hardware server that could be a blade box interconnected by networking devices, either may have access to internet or restricted access only to the intranet. On the server, you run an operating system that could be of any of the flavors. On the operating system, you will have a software that would be executing the desired workloads. Now let's relate this terminology or a stack to the layer where you consume the service. Infrastructure as a service. The vendor will be providing you the infrastructure such as a server and the networking device, on top of which you will be responsible for any application that runs on top of the operating system. In infrastructure as a service, the vendor who provides the service will be responsible for all the layers beneath the hypervisor layer. The consumer will be responsible for security and ownership of anything that runs on top of the operating system and the operating system by itself. Amazon Web Services is an infrastructure as a service provider. Platform as a service. Service that is consumed as a platform is platform as a service. In this case, the vendor will not only provide the infrastructure but will also be providing you a platform on which you have to execute the desired workloads. Now, the administration of the infrastructure and the platform on which you are going to execute your workloads will be the responsibility of the service provider. And the consuming person will be responsible only for the application that runs on top of the platform. Windows Azure is platform as a service, as it is offered as a platform for the consumption. Software as a service. This is the most sophisticated methodology of service prevalent today. This is in fact one of the primitive service offerings from cloud services. Service derived or consumed at the layer where the software operates is defined as software as a service. In this service, the vendor is responsible not only for the operating system and the platform, but also for the application layer, and the consuming person is only going to be consuming the application and will not hold any responsibility, as the consumption by itself is going to be a service. In software as a service, the end-to-end ownership lies with the vendor who provides software as a service. Salesforce is a very good example for software as a service, or SaaS. A quick recap. Initially, we spoke about disruption. What are the disruptive technologies in the market today? And then we went over a quick introduction about cloud services, where we spoke about what is the history of cloud service and how did the evolution happen, and then what is the context of cloud service as it is applicable to the service industry. And then finally, we spoke about deployment models and at what layer services are consumed today. I thank you for checking out my video. If you have any clarifications, please write to me at rajakumar.sampathkumar@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed my video. All the very best for any next steps you may take on cloud computing and whatever phase that you are in the course of cloud strategy, implementation, migration, or support. Thank you again. This is Raj signing off.